Okay, good. Good to know. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our little talk today on the evolution of e-commerce, so from direct-to-consumer to consumer and beyond. We've got a couple of presentations today, but really the goal of this is to have a bit of a conversation, both after the presentations and afterwards over a beer outside. I'm going to introduce myself and just give you a little bit of my background and why I'm standing here, and then I'll introduce all the other presenters who have far more interesting things to say for all of you. So my name is Eamonn Carey. I'm a general partner at a VC fund called Tera Ventures. I've invested in lots and lots of companies around the world. I've invested with various different funds, including Techstars, unfortunately, who obviously have a very bad reputation here now. So apologies for that. And if you ever see me out and about at a conference, please point me towards the nearest karaoke bar. It is my literally my favorite thing on earth to do. But the real reason I'm here and the real reason I'm interested in e-commerce and retail as a category is this. So about 25 years ago or 30 years ago, my first job was working in retail. I sold guitars to other pimply 16-year-olds. And it was empathy with those people and the conversation that I had with them that convinced people to buy the guitars. And the relationship that you had in a physical retail outlet then is something that's never really been replicated online in any meaningful way, shape, or form. As an experiment, when I was on the train coming here this morning, I looked at when I made my first purchase from Amazon. It was the 8th of January 2001. Very boring, apart from Madden NFL, which actually was a great game. But the Amazon experience looked like this, right back then. 22 years ago now. I bought a book from Amazon about 5 or 6 days ago, and the experience really hasn't changed an awful lot, right? The UI, the UX, everything is very, very similar. And I think a lot of the improvements in e-commerce over the last couple of years have been mainly driven by improvements in customer service, right? The book about Tony Hsieh, Zappos did Delivering Happiness. We have better returns, we have better logistics, we have better delivery, we have better customer success people. We maybe have one-click purchases in some places, but my belief is that the retail experience and the user experience of e-commerce really needs to change and needs to change dramatically over the next couple of years. I think there may be trouble ahead, as I'll allude to a little bit later on, in terms of macroeconomic conditions, the expectations that people have around the relationship that they have with brands, the expectations that they have around the shopping experience and the purchase experience. And if you look at brands that have an offline presence, you can see how that's transferred from being a place that you go to shop to a place that you go to have an experience more and more, right? So a lot is changing in terms of the relationship that you have with your customers and how important that is. Now, there was a really interesting podcast. If anyone's a fan of Lenny's podcasts, or if you're not, you should listen to it. It is amazing. So Lenny he was a former product manager at Airbnb. He now runs a very successful newsletter and podcast. And he interviewed the founder of Bobby, which is an infant formula company in the US, very successful company founded by another Irish person. So I can have a little bit of national pride in sharing this story. But Laura, who's the founder of that company, talked a lot about their early years and just doing commerce, like trying to sell infant formula into a market that's heavily crowded. And what she talked about in terms of them finding their success was really kind of thinking, yes, about commerce, but thinking about content and community first, and how those were really central pillars of what they were doing. They weren't just selling infant formula to people. There was a content piece that educated. There was a community piece that got their audience engaged with one another. And then when they had that, it was much easier to drive purchase intent. Once they purchased, it was much easier to drive retention, et cetera, et cetera. So it is an amazing podcast. And I have seen all of this borne out in companies that I've backed in the past. So Kenko is a Portuguese company. It does powdered smoothies and soups and shakes and more. They're about to get national distribution in 1,000 Walmarts across the US starting on May 8th, which is a huge deal for them. The reason that they got the national distribution is they've been very good at cultivating small micro communities around specific topics related to the brand. So they had nutritionists that you could talk to about not just taking Kenko, but actually your wider diet. And they had recipe pages where people could share information about the products that they were buying and how they were using them in formats outside of what we had told them to do. And so someone from Walmart landed on one of these recipe pages, subscribed to the brand, told a couple of friends of theirs about it. It made its way up to Walmart HQ in Arkansas, and that's now going to be a deal that's worth tens of millions of dollars over the next 12 months. But it was that community, that tiny community that had less than 100 people, that led to this huge, huge deal. On the content side of things, a company called Pesky Fish, which is, they describe themselves as the world's first B2C company because they're boat to chef and boat to consumer as well. So it's direct to consumer seafood. So you buy directly from the boat, you know the provenance, you know when it's been landed, you know when it lands at your house. And their content was huge. The deal that we did with every boat and every scallop diver and mussel farmer and everything else that we worked with was that people wanted to see pictures of what they were buying. They wanted to see the boat that the fish came in on. They wanted to see the conditions that the mussels were raised in. They wanted to see the divers going down for the scallops. And the level of engagement that we saw from that meant that in the space of 2 months, so when the pandemic started, this was previously mostly selling to chefs and hospitality. In the space of 2 months, we went to 27,000 customers and $1 million in revenue from a world where every restaurant in the UK had shut. But it was the value of that content that drove it. And you could see that on Instagram, you could see that on the responses to our emails, et cetera, et cetera. So content was really huge for us. And I think we're seeing the same thing now with Click and Grow. So Click and Grow is an indoor gardening company across the water in Estonia. They have been selling these kind of 9-piece and 3-piece and 27-piece gardens for the last couple of years. And the problem, as anyone here who's ever grown plants will know, is plants are relatively easy to grow, but they're much easier to kill, right? So a bit of a challenge if you spent a bunch of money growing them. But actually the content and community that's grown out of, pardon the pun, Click and Grow is now a bunch of applications and products that will tell you how to better take care of your plants, that will help you, not just the ones that you grow here, but ones that you grow elsewhere, and community that allows you to kind of talk to people around your interests. So if you're interested in growing, herbs, salad, various different things, you can do that. If you're interested in using the pods to grow a different type of weed, then you can join a community that's interested in that as well. But it just shows you the value of content and community and how much it drives commerce. And I'm happy to talk to people afterwards about the kind of retention and engagement and revenue numbers that we've seen as a result of all of this being enabled. But to me, this is table stakes, right? This is what people are going to start to expect. You want to have a relationship with the brands that you buy from. You want to have an experience, and whether that's live shopping, which we've seen become absolutely massive in Asian markets and starting to kind of, I think, go through the trough of disillusionment in this part of the world and become a little bit more mainstream. This is what people will expect, right? Because there is a bloodbath coming for a lot of companies, unfortunately, and I think it's the ones that just expect the 2001 Amazon experience to be good enough for the next 5 or 10 years. That's simply not the case, right? Consumer expectations are very, very different now. And if people are going to be putting their hard-earned euro or dollars or pounds or anything else to work, I think they're going to want to do it, and they'll be willing to spend a little bit more money to do it with a brand or with a company where they feel that there is some sort of connection. And that's where all of this becomes super, super important. So I'm not going to talk about statistics. I'm not going to waffle on anymore. There are far more intelligent people than I who are going to tell you a little bit about their view on the world to come. But enjoy the next couple of minutes of talk, and I'll see you for a little beer afterwards. But I'd like to welcome up Susanne from Shopify, who'll get us started.